So you had to establish a unit from scratch.
Absolutely. So you have a unit that doesn't exist. Unlike most units, when you're posted into it, you have operating procedures, you have buildings that you own, you have equipment that you own. JTF2 had nothing. It didn't exist. You know, there's a certain procedure you've got to go through to form a unit in the Canadian Forces. So we had to go through all of that. We had to go through the process of actually developing a training process so that we could be operationally ready in 12 months' time. So detailing all those key milestones, we had to go across Canada to recruit people to apply for this unit, and then put people through a selection process that was extremely rigorous and demanding, so that at the end of it, if you were training 25 recruits applying for this unit, that you might get one that would meet your different standards for this unit. And so you had to run quite a number of serials to finally get the number of personnel that we needed.
What was the numbers that it was originally established for?
It was a reasonable number, but I can tell you that the number today is definitely larger. The Special Forces in Canada have been enlarged significantly since those days.
And JTF2 is sort of Canada's equivalent to
the other
SAS?
Yeah, the other tier 1 units in the world would be like the Special Air Service in the United Kingdom, the SBS, the Special Boat Service in the United Kingdom, SEAL Team 6 in the United States, Delta Force in the United States, so units of that ilk.
And when you were standing up, did you get quite a bit of assistance from those other units in other countries? You
know, fortunately we did. We did training assistance visits very early on with those units, and they were very helpful. In some cases, they actually sent training assistance teams to help us. But as we did our visits with them, of course, we were gleaning key pieces of information to assist us as we formed our unit. And so their assistance was really important, and it became ongoing assistance interaction that goes on to this day. You have exchanges going on for training opportunities and that? They still do, I'm sure, yeah.
Well, that was a very interesting job, and how long did that job last for you?
In my case, for 2 years, and again, it came to an abrupt end when I received a promotion, because at that time the commanding officer was a lieutenant colonel, and I received a promotion. So that was good news, but that was bad news.
Because you couldn't continue.
I couldn't continue as the CO of Joint Task Force 2.
Now, colonel's a big jump in the forces, to go from lieutenant colonel to colonel in a lot of ways. So what was your job when you were promoted colonel from JTF2?
My first job was as commanding officer, or as base commander of Canadian Force Base Calgary. And I knew going into it, I mean, you are responsible for all the personnel on that base and for all of the infrastructure of the base and for the key coordination with the community, so the city of Calgary. But I knew that it was going to be challenging from the get-go, because at the same time as I was being promoted and posted there, again, there was another federal budget, and sometimes that can be bad news for defense, because it announced the closure of half of Canadian Force Base Calgary, the Harvey Barracks side, which was leased land from the Tsuut'ina Nation. And so whenever you go through a closure process, there's a lot of work, a lot of coordination required to do that. And then, of course, to get things ready for those soldiers that are moving so they can move to their new location, in this case, Edmonton. And of course, you're dealing with unions and these different sorts of organizations, and so it can be a very challenging period, and it was quite an experience. And then, unfortunately, 1 year later, another federal budget, another announced closure of the remainder of Canadian Force Base Calgary, so the Curry Barracks side. So again, going through that process over the next year of coordinating the closure.
And the city of Calgary was not too happy about that.
No, the city wasn't. They were tremendous supporters of the military over the years. Edmonton, and I give them a great deal of credit, they realized that they were going to be the recipients of the military from Calgary, and that Calgary was renowned as a city who had given its military tremendous support. So Edmonton, the city of Edmonton actually sent teams down to see how the city went about supporting its military and the organizations that had been created to provide that support to the military. There was an organization called Calgary Salutes that was sort of the focal point for supporting the military, and they, as a result, created an Edmonton Salutes organization. And to this day, I've heard nothing but good things from soldiers who serve in Edmonton about the support that they get from the city.
But it was quite an adjustment to quite a few people.
It was. It's always heartbreaking when a city you love you're being torn away from, but you know, you have to look to the future.
Yeah, yes. So that was a challenging job, but wasn't a feel-good job, although the result was good.
Yeah, and it was feel-good in the sense that, again, the people I was working with, you just knew that they were working their hearts out to make this as less challenging for all the people involved as possible. So I really give a lot of credit to the staff of Canadian Force Base Calgary and the units that were involved in that transition.
So you had 2 years at CFB Calgary, and then what was your next job?
And then I did move to Ontario to be the Chief of Staff of Land Forces Central Area.
Okay, and the Chief of Staff, Land Forces Central Area, is Land Forces Central Area is all the units in Ontario to the Lakehead?
That's correct. All the Army units.
Yeah. All the Army units.
Regular and reserve.
What challenges when you were Chief of Staff?
Well, there were a number of things that occurred during that period, from flooding in Winnipeg and deploying units from Petawawa up there. That was really the key job of the brigade commander in Petawawa to do that, who later was General Hillier at that time, later became the Chief of Defense Staff. But trying to give him the support he needed to help transition those units out of theirs. And that's really the job of the Chief of Staff of an area headquarters, is having the key staff of the headquarters provide the support to those formation commanders who are actually given the job to do something.
So a lot of times the Chief of Staff is the troubleshooter when they...
Yeah, he can be. He's the detail person to make certain things get done and accomplished.
Yeah, okay. Now, you were Chief of Staff to Land Forces Central Area. What was your next appointment?
Well, then I stayed on in Toronto as a student again, another year-long session where I took 2 courses. For half the year, the Advanced Military Studies course, which is an operational level course where you're working at the division and higher level. And then the National Security Studies course, which is strategic in nature and involves all interaction with the different government agencies. So that was a year-long process. And again, it's really designed to groom people to become generals in the Canadian Armed Forces.
So after you graduated from there, you were promoted?
No, I wasn't promoted. I was posted to Denmark, actually, to an organization called SHERBRIG, the Standing High Readiness Brigade for United Nations Operations. And I became the Chief of Staff to a Danish Brigadier-General, and then 1 year later to a Dutch Brigadier-General. And the role of that organization was really to be able to bring a core number of units very quickly into an operational theater, a United Nations theater of operations, to give the UN time to recruit other nations to provide troops, and then get those troops there and eventually get the equipment that they would need to operate, whereas our units would come with that equipment already. And we would be the basis for the Sherbrooke headquarters would be the basis for a UN force headquarters that again came with all our own computers and equipment, so that you're on the ground, you're ready to operate very, very quickly. And then that gave the UN time to get other resources in theater. And during my time there, we actually did deploy. My brigade commander became the force commander for the United Nations mission in Ethiopia, Eritrea, and I became the force chief of staff. And so my Sherbrooke staff became the nucleus of our headquarters force staff, and then we brought in people from throughout the world really to flush out that headquarters. And the concept worked extremely well. We did very quickly, we were able to separate the opposing forces from Ethiopia and Eritrea, to get that 20-kilometer buffer zone, to clear out the war dead from the buffer zone, to create the conditions whereby a group of United Nations officials could go in there to create a border commission, so they could study the views of the Ethiopians, the views of the Eritreans, the historical background to the border, and that they could then delineate where that border should actually be and announce that, well, delineate and then demarcate. They had to actually mark on the ground as well, and then announce to the world where that border would be. And so we set the conditions for that border commission to be able to do that.
And were they happy? In some areas they were, I suspect.
Well, that border commission was still doing its work when I left 6 months later. But when it was finally announced, unfortunately the two parties did not, one party agreed and one party didn't. Yeah. You're always going to get that, because there will be somebody not happy. But I am happy to say that many years later, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, finally the Ethiopians have agreed with the border that was delineated, and the Eritreans had always agreed with it. So now there is confirmed peace in that mission area. So all that to say, that is a mission that was successful.
Okay, that's fantastic. And then, so that was the, what particular unit was that? That was the...
Sherbrooke, Standing High Readiness Brigade.
The Standing High Readiness Brigade. And then, where did you go after that?
Well, then I was posted as the career manager for colonels and generals, essentially. Director Senior Appointments.
And that's where that came in.
Yeah.
And then after that job?
After that, I was posted as the Commander of Land Force Atlantic area, so I was responsible for all Army units in the 4 Atlantic provinces. I had never had a posting. I had done training in Eastern Canada in the Atlantic provinces, but I had never had a posting there. Wonderful experience, wonderful people, great soldiers. The reserves in that part of the country are very, very active and capable. The regular force are as well. Of course, our largest Army base, Gagetown, is in the Atlantic provinces, so we're part of my command at that time. So yeah, great experience, really enjoyed it.
Now, one of the things you mentioned earlier, that you were in Bosnia. When did that come in?
As I was Chief of Staff of Land Force Central area, we were tasked with providing the Canadian contingent commander. So fortunately, the commander of the area selected me to go there and be given the opportunity to be the Canadian contingent commander in Bosnia. So I served 6 months in 2008 in Bosnia. And
what was going on in Bosnia at that time?
well, it was NATO had just came in a year previously, so that was having a very positive impact. But you know, whenever you go through a conflict of that nature, there's a great deal of hatred, and that doesn't dissipate quickly. So the sort of things we were dealing with while I was there, one of the major ones was some major riots in the city of Drvar. Again, it's the different ethnic groups that although they were on the way towards peace, they just weren't accepting it at that point. And so from houses being torched down to taking on different citizens, there were those sort of challenges that we were dealing with. And so again, it was made for a very interesting tour of duty, and one that one never forgets, and one never forgets when you go on these different tours of duty, whether it be NATO tours of duty or United Nations tours of duty or coalitions of the willing, such as Afghanistan. Once you start a war, the degree of hatred that manifests itself is, it's very hard getting people to pull back from that point on.
Now, you finished the Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Sudan, and what was your next posting on that?
Well, from there, where did I go after Ethiopia?
Defense attaché?
I did finish off my career as the defense attaché in London, England, for a 3-year period. And at that time, I was accredited as both the defense attaché. To Commonwealth countries, you would call it defense advisor. But if you're not in a Commonwealth country, it's defense attaché. And I was accredited to the United Kingdom and to the Republic of Ireland.
So you, throughout your career, you spent 5 years in England.
I did,
which is
absolutely,
which is, and the defense attaché is what does a defense attaché do?
Well, you're really responsible for the defense relationship between Canada and the United Kingdom. So the ambassador or high commissioner, in the case of a Commonwealth country, is really dealing with the political relationship, whereas I'm dealing with the military relationship. And I guess one of the key aspects at that time during my 3 years, because Afghanistan was just in its infancy, and so we were coordinating a lot of activities between Canada and the United Kingdom. So it was an important relationship so that we could support each other.
Okay, what do you, so that was a nice, were your children still around?
Not when we were in the United Kingdom the last
Which was
time.
sort of a bonus. It's a nice way to end a career.
It was a fascinating way to
And
end
there's
a career.
a lot of social aspect to the job there?
There were and there are. Also the opportunity to travel throughout the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland as part of your duties. I would say one of the things that was really fascinating was the opportunity with the development of the Canadian Victoria Cross. With Afghanistan starting out, it was realized that although Canada had its own honor system, and as part of that honor system, we would have our own Canadian Victoria Cross. Canada had never minted any Canadian Victoria Crosses. So the process was started in Canada to develop that, what it would look like. And as part of that, they had determined that they wanted to maintain certain traditions. Number one, what are the criteria that's utilized by the British to award a Victoria Cross? So we sought out that sort of information and provided back. But as well, the British Victoria Crosses, there were always elements from the guns from the Crimea. That are were put in that medal. And we wanted to maintain tradition in Canada. So the Chancellery in Canada requested the Queen for permission, her permission, to have a piece of that cannon from the Crimea, so that we could include elements of that medal into our Canadian Victoria Crosses that were created. And so I had the chance, along with my Army, Air, and Naval attaches, to travel up with a British Rear Admiral in helicopter up to a depot in northern England and actually go through a cutting ceremony where a piece of that cannon from the Crimea was taken and sliced, and then that slice handed officially over from the British MOD representative, Ministry of Defence representative, to myself, and then we shipped our piece of the medal back to Canada, and that's now incorporated into the actual Canadian Victoria Crosses that have been created. But I should mention, I think the folks in Ottawa did an excellent job, because incorporated within our medal is not just that medal from the guns from the Crimea, but also a mineral from every province and territory in Canada, and as well an original Confederation medal from 1867 was put into the mix.
Into the mix. Well, that is very interesting. And that would be something you would remember.
I will remember that for the rest of my life. It was very unique.
Now, CDS, our Defense Liaison Attaché in London, you are decided to retire.
I did, yes. I had 37 years in by that point. So I decided to retire, and we decided to move back to where I had grown up, which is here in the Lethbridge area. And in hindsight, it's been a great move. We have really enjoyed it. It's just the right size city, has everything, but not some of the challenges of big cities. So we're delighted to be here.
So have you been bored since you've been retired?
No, I haven't. I've got involved with quite a number of different nonprofit organizations. So I was, for 10 years, up until this past summer, I was the president of the Dominion Canada Rifle Association. I was also the president of the Army Cadet League of Canada for the province of Alberta. And then I had a 5-year appointment as Colonel Commandant for the Royal Canadian Army Cadets. I've been
across Canada?
That's a national appointment, absolutely. I've been a director of 702 Wing, Royal Canadian Air Force Association. I'm the chairman of the Lethbridge Military Museum, which we're in right now.
Yes.
And I'm now honored to be on the foundation with the Lieutenant Governor, who leads us with regard to the Alberta History and Heroes Foundation. So we have heroes in every way of life, whether it be farmers or police community or whatever. So really, this foundation is designed to kind of promote our heroes in all of those areas, and also to promote the study of history, because we should be learning from the past.
Well, we're sitting in a museum that's dedicated to the past, because what do they say? If you don't understand the past, you're bound to repeat it in the future.
Absolutely. So I'm delighted to say that History and Heroes Foundation have given a bursary to both the University of Lethbridge and the Lethbridge Lethbridge College, so that they can promote history.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Now, and then you were also involved in the Last Post Fund.
I was, yeah. For 2 or 3 years, absolutely, yeah.
And president of the Lethbridge United Services Institute.
Absolutely, I'd forgotten about that. But, yeah, and I shouldn't, because they're a great organization, and I enjoyed, and still, I'm a very active member of that, the Lethbridge United Services Institute.
Now, going back to a little bit earlier in your career, I just noticed, I remembered, you liaised with the U.S. in regards to JTF-2, with the Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 and that. But you also earlier attended the Ranger course,
I did, yes.
which is quite a defining course, I understand, for young infantry officers.
It is, and you don't have to be just infantry, but you're right, there are a lot of infantry officers that go on it, particularly in the United States. That is one of their key, they use it as kind of a leadership testing course, if you will. But Canada receives a handful, 2 or 3 vacancies each year that they pay for, obviously, Canada pays for, to send Canadians to go through that course. It's a very rigorous, challenging course, so not everybody makes it. My SEAL started with about 250 candidates, and I can't remember how many passed, but it was about 90 or something like that. So there's a lot of attrition along the way.
Through injuries or just...
injuries is part of it. Others not meeting standards or not being fit enough. But it's also so demanding that just a number of people just say, well, thank you very much, but it's not for me.
So you have enjoyed your retirement so far?
I have, yeah. We're really enjoying it, making the most of it, and we hope to continue doing that.
Well, Ray, you had a fascinating career. And something I didn't mention also, you were the distinguished alumni of the University of Lethbridge, too, I remember.
Yeah, you're right, I was.
In 2005.
It's a great university. I was really privileged to actually have been put through the University of Lethbridge by the military. You know, I used to think back to my 3rd and 4th year classes, 4th year in particular, where if you took a history class, for instance, you would hold it in the professor's office because there would only be 2 or 3 students at the most and your professors. So you didn't dare not show up. Yeah. But the quality of education was fantastic, and I think it is to this day at the university there. So.
But thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much for joining us in this edition of A Century of Service.